My name's Larry Hennett. I am an alcoholic.
Larry.
I'm nervous.
Nice.
I feel like I was just sitting here thinking, like, every time I come here, it's like I'm riding with Jerry, and he's doing the talking, and I just get to listen, and I kind of feel like I'm supposed to be riding with him, and he's supposed to be up here. But anyways, my sobriety date is August the 23rd of 2015. And I'm blessed to be here. It's not my first time at trying to get sober. If you're new, welcome. I'm a firm believer in you never have to take another drink. But for whatever reason, I would come and I was just unable to hear the message or unable to take the directions is probably the best way. But anyways, I am sponsored. I do have a home group. I do believe in service, and I do a lot of service. And the one thing that I knew coming back this time, I just want to say, is that I had watched people for a long, long time. I've always been one to pay attention. And when I would go out and come back and go out and come back, even people that I've never met, like the Wallace or Daniel, or I'm still watching these folks are doing the same exact thing. They're in the same exact meeting. And just for whatever reason, like, that never registered. But it was very welcoming to know that, like, so they're still here, so, like, this works. So I have zero questions about, does Alcoholics Anonymous work? Like, it absolutely works. So I'll just kind of start with my childhood. I guess the bad news is my mother and my father are both alcoholics and drug addicts. The good news is my dad's a little over 30 years sober, and I think my mom is 28 or 29 years sober. They both got sober in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. I grew up in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. As a kid, I was the kid disrupting the meetings and running around. And, I was off the chain right out of the gate before alcohol even got involved. And I've tried a lot of ways to better my life. My parents I'm a kid that went to Alateen. I did therapy, I did counseling. Like, my parents, for many, many years, I would say, I had this horrible life, and, like, if y'all were raised the way I was, like, y'all would probably drink too. And, looking back now, after being able to do an honest inventory and an honest appraisal, man, like, they did the best they could. And they tried to get me to help and everything I needed through that process. But so a lot of chaos. My family's Italian, so I was raised under, let me rephrase that. The message I heard was that money was power, and if you had a good attorney, you do whatever you want, and you can always get out of it, and it's okay to drink and drive, just get out of, you know what I mean? Like for whatever reason, like, those are the things that I caught on to. And there was zero spirituality or God in my household. I never attended a church. None of that stuff existed. There was a lot of legal stuff going on, and a lot of fighting in my household. And so I tell you all that just to, not for you to feel sorry for me, just to, like, I was consumed with fear as far back as I can remember. Consumed with memories of, was my mom going to kill herself one night, and was my dad going to go to prison, and like, just there was just all this stuff. I couldn't go. One time I attempted to spend a night with a kid in the neighborhood and came home in the middle of the night because I was worried about, like, what was going on in my household, and that's from a young kid. So I was just okay with the world. I was okay with myself and everything, just from word go. My parents would later. They would split up. I think I was 11, and back then it was in the 80s. My dad wound up with custody, and that wasn't something that really happened a lot. And so that was kind of weird too, because, like, he was newly getting sober, and he was a person that walked into Alcoholics Anonymous and picked up a white chip and never drank again. And then my mom struggled in and out of rehabs, in and out of detoxes, in and out of, like, she was unable, and so there was just a lot of anger. And then so, like, he would try to protect us, and so we were unable to see me and my brother were unable to see my mom, and I just had anger, man. Like, I thought he was trying to keep me from her, and there's just all this stuff going on. And so at 11, I'm fighting in middle school and getting kicked out of school, and that was cool. My dad was in the car business, so that's fine. Like, you got kicked out of school, so you're just going to come to the dealership and work. And so at a young age of, like, 12 or 13, I was like, oh, okay, so, like, I'm just going to be a car dealer, so I don't need school, and all this stuff they're teaching me is irrelevant. And I would tell the teachers that, by the way. I already know what I'm doing. This is pointless. Geometry is not going to help me. And I just lived like, I did what I wanted to do. And so he would make me work. And so I kind of thought that was cool. And it's just a crazy, kind of a chaotic childhood. And he was trying to get sober. So he was attending a lot of meetings. And then my brother's 4 years younger than me. So A's in the car business, and B's he's very active in Alcoholics Anonymous, so he's not home a lot. So I would have to help my brother do his homework, and I'd have to cook, and I hated my life. That was, like, this is ridiculous. I don't get to be a kid. I got to do all this stuff. So what he did do for me was, because I had so much anger and rage, he had got me into martial arts. So I started doing karate at 11 years old, and that was probably the first thing I ever realized I was really good at, and I excelled well in it. And this is kind of a common theme with me. So I will dive all the way into something that I love to escape from whatever reality might be going on. And so that's what I did with that. And so I started traveling. I was traveling all over the East Coast doing competitions and fighting and stuff like that. And it was cool. Like, that's all I wanted to do. I guess I thought then, here we go again. Like, I'm going to be the next Chuck Norris, so I don't need school. And I just continued. That was like a theme, man. Like, and so I started professionally kickboxing, and that went well. I thought I wanted to do that. There's no money in that, by the way. And so, in fact, a guy that I traveled with, I don't know if any of y'all follow that, but Dale Sunshine Fry was from this area. And so he trained me some, and I just loved that, and something happened. We started drinking one time. I think I was 16 or 17, and they allowed me to drink, and that was it. The first time I drank, I never, ever in my story have I drank, a fruity drink or just to chill. Like, I drank with a purpose. From the first time that I drank, I absolutely got drunk, hammered, needed to find more. Where's it at? The store's closed. Like, that was the first time. The very first time that I drank was just like that. But what I can tell you is that all that fear went away, and all that anger went away, and all that, whatever. I was able to just relax. I was able to just have 5 minutes of relief. And that's all to be honest with you, like, that's all I was seeking. And I seek that for about 25 years, just nonstop. Some form, some way, somehow. And so alcohol became the thing, and I decided that I was going to leave home because, I didn't like my dad and thought that, I had a raw deal with him. And, just to tell you how selfish I am. So this is a person that gets sober and takes me and my brother in. I'm sure he doesn't know how to be a father and a mother. I just leave him a note one day. I dropped my brother off at school, and I was 16. I left a note and said, I'm not coming home. And we were living in Florida at the time. He had moved down there. And so I drove at 16 years old. I don't even know how I had the money to do that, but I did. I drove back up here and decided that I was going to move in with the guys that I was kickboxing with. Their mom would allow me to move in with them, and that's just how selfish I am. I don't think about anyone else's feelings or what he might have went through, or the fact that my brother probably needed to ride home. Like, none of that stuff, entered my mind. And so it's not long, but alcohol takes over that. Like, I'm no longer allowed to, I started losing. I wasn't winning as much because I was just more focused on the alcohol. I wasn't training like I needed to. And then the ego would kick in and say, I don't need to because I'm better than them anyways. And you know what I mean? And that's just a delusional lie. And so alcohol would eventually take that away. I'd give that up. Alcohol became more important to me. And alcohol became more important than me going to school. My parents my mom actually stepped in and tried to, well, she didn't try, she did. The county that I was living in, she let them know that my parents didn't live in that county, and that's how schools were funded, and so they came and kicked me out. And she was trying to get me to come home, is what she was trying to do. But that didn't work. I decided I was going to get a lawyer and get emancipated, and I did that. But half the school year's gone, so now I'm emancipated, which I'm fighting to go to school on my own, and now I'm going to fail, so I'm not going to school anyway. So the whole purpose of me just living my life wasn't working, and I just wanted to drink. That's what I wanted to do. Would finally get a job. I decided to buy a motorcycle, and so deep down inside, I always wanted to prove to my dad I had this thing of success that was kind of beat in my mind. And so I got into the motorcycle business, and I would sell motorcycles and then became a sales manager. And I did well with that, but like alcohol was always there, other substances as well. And I would get fired. That was the first job I got fired from for drinking too much. And then I decided I was going to move into the car business because there wasn't any money in the motorcycle business. And I did that for years, and that's what I did. And I got married, married a girl that went to my high school, and we had been friends for a long time. And, we would drink, but everything kind of stayed like, for a long time I was able to like drink, and I could stay out to 2 or 3 in the morning or whatever. So my brain would tell me it's okay because I'm still making it to work the next day. I'm still able to function. So alcohol's not a problem. But there's numerous like fights and DWIs. I've had 4 DWIs. Car accidents, broke my neck, went through a windshield, but alcohol's not a problem. I just, for whatever reason, it was just, it was because it was the 4th of July and I shouldn't have been on that road or whatever lie I would tell myself. And she called me one day, the first time that I knew deep down in my heart that alcohol was going to cause me problems. I was at work, she called and she said, I'm 22 years old, and she said, so I'm going to need for you to stop drinking. I'll never forget. That was the words. I'm going to need for you to stop drinking. She called me at work, and it was about 2 o'clock. Now, the dealership that I worked at, the owner of that would send me with money to the liquor store at about 5 to buy the Crown for me and him. And we would drink, and I would get home at 9 or 10. And so I know I'm a couple hours away from drinking, and she's telling me she needs for me to stop. And I remember, I didn't verbally say it, but I remember saying, I can't do that. There was like 0 questions in my heart about like, I'm not going to be able to do that. Like, that's not going to work. And so I immediately went to copping pleas. Well, how about if I cut back? What if I stop drinking liquor? How about if it's just wine? Like, I'm just copping pleas for anything. Please, please, please. And it didn't work. She wound up leaving me one weekend, and I asked her to take me. It was the old ATC. Because I didn't want to lose her, and I had a kid at that time. I had a 2-year-old. He was 2 at that time, and I really wanted to save my family. So I was like, will you please take me to the ATC? And she did. And back then, I think it was a 14-day deal or something. And I convinced her after 5 days to come and get me, and she did. And that same night, I convinced her that they told me in there that I needed to quit drinking liquor and that wine was okay. And, that would work for a few months. And, so I'm just patching it. And we wound up staying together. We were together for 10 years. And then we had my daughter. And she just had enough. That was the bottom line. She'd absolutely had enough, and she left. And she's from a good family. And that right there was probably, that excelled my drinking more than anything. I was unable, and I'll be honest with you, I'm coming up on 4 months of sobriety. I was unable to deal with that until I got sober this time. And that's been 15 years ago. I was just unable to, I was internally unable to process that. I just never could imagine my life without her. I think deep down inside there was always this thought of if I could pull it together and get it together, like I'd be able to have that back. And I understand, like, I hear a lot of people, especially new people and especially females, like, like, I can't imagine, like, not having my kids. Like, I can assure y'all that I love my kids as much as anyone in this room. But it was not enough to keep me sober. And so she protected them. It got real ugly, and, like, I didn't see them for years. I was unable to see them, and so I would continue to drink, and just kind of fast forward, I think it was 2007 is when I gave it my first real go at trying to get sober and coming to Alcoholics Anonymous. And it wasn't my doings either. I was on the way I was living in Myrtle Beach with another girl, and I told her I was going to run to the store. And I did. But I didn't tell her I was going to go to the store in Raleigh. And I had her car, and somewhere through that, partying for 2 or 3 days, not answering her calls or texts or anything, that I realized I probably needed to get home. And I was running, I can't remember, it was a high speed, 120, something like that on 40. I even missed 95. Like, I wasn't even going back to Myrtle Beach. I was going to Wilmington. And I had got arrested again with another DWI in Burgaw, right on 40. And to this day, I don't really know how my mom found out. She had told me she was done bonding me out of jail. I've been arrested. I always say this. I've been arrested 28 times. They pulled my record the other day we were doing it as a joke, and there's 82 encounters with the law. I was like, but that's encounters. I've only been arrested. You know what I mean? But like, that's different. But I played that card with, like, she felt really bad, you know, that we weren't able to see her and for what my dad had done. So I would play that card with her to the point of almost putting her in bankruptcy. I know she'll bomb me out. I know she'll do this. I know she'll do that. Like, I just used her. And she told me, like, don't ever call me again. And so, like, when they put me in that jail cell that day, like, I just wanted to lay down. Like, I was drunk. There's nobody to call. I'm done. And, like, within, like, 5 hours, they were coming to get me out, and it was her. To this day, I've never asked her. I should probably ask her. I don't know how she knew about that. I didn't call. I didn't have anybody to call. And her deal was, I'll bond you out, but you're going to stay with me until the court date. I mean, I'll take that all day. I don't want to be in jail. And so what happened was, that was a Saturday when she got me that morning. I went home, and from drinking and all, I was tired, and I went to sleep, and I woke up, and she said, she told me the story later, but she thought I was going to wake up and call my friends and go drink. And I didn't. I said I had remembered that, I remember she got sober at this place called the Hills Group. And it wasn't me, man. I said, well, I was wondering if you'd take me to that AA meeting. And she did. And there was a guy there, I'll never forget it, man. He, you know, I don't want to talk to anybody when I'm new. I don't want your phone number and none of that stuff, man. I just want to come in here and get some help. And I just need some relief. But don't talk to me, and I'm not going to talk to you. And there was a guy that was, you know, forced himself on me after the meeting, and he was a younger guy, which I thought that was kind of cool. And he said, well, let me give you my number. And he gave me his number. But, like, he was smart, man. He got my number. And because I wouldn't have called him. That's the truth. He called me the next day, and he said, so I'm going to pick you up tonight, and I'm going to take you to a meeting. And this is, looking back on it, probably one of the best examples of Alcoholics Anonymous. He said, I'm going to take you to a meeting every single night for 2 weeks. And when we're at those meetings, you need to be getting people's names and phone numbers, because I didn't have a license anymore. And he said, you're gonna need to form a network, and you're going to need to get rides. Don't call me on the 11th day. And he said that. And I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. Well, meanwhile, in 2 weeks, like, we're going to meetings, we're shooting pool after meetings, we're just doing all this stuff. Now, I don't have a sponsor, not into the book or any of that stuff, but, like, the pool's cool and the girls are cool and, like, all that stuff. And I called him on the 11th day, and he was like, nah, man, like I told you, dude, like, you should have somebody to call. And that was my first attempt, but like, I didn't. So I got a sponsor by name. And they always say, you know, if you go to enough meetings, you'll hear, man, like, get somebody that's got what you want. You know, I'd always heard that. So I really paid attention, man. This guy had a good career, a beautiful wife, a nice car. I was like, I want what he wants, like, literally. You know what I mean? Like, that's right. And he sponsored me for a while, and you know, the message I heard was like, you know, go home and read the doctor's opinion and call me. And I didn't read the doctor's opinion, but I did call him and stuff like that. And I think I'd gotten to 90 days sober, and I'd met this girl, and she was like 9 months sober, and she was in a homeless shelter, and for whatever reason, I thought that was a good mix. And so, you know, that's what I needed, man. I was always, and that's a big theme on me, like, let me just put the outside together. Let me just try to feel better. And so I wound up getting with her, and then, you know, of course, against what my sponsor thought I should do. And, you know, I haven't worked any steps. I haven't done an inventory. Forget about amends. Like, that's, you know what I mean? Like, none of that stuff had been done, and we were just a train wreck. And we wound up relapsing together, and it got dark. It got real dark, and I would have numerous attempts at trying to come back and go into a detox. And I've tried other solutions that are out there, different clinics and stuff like that. And I just wanted the problem to go away. Like, I was unwilling to do any work. Y'all give me something to make me feel better. And that stuff always took me back out. Like, I always was hanging out with those kind of people and would just wind up drinking again. And got into went to Holly Hill again. I've been in 8 different detoxes, treatment centers, and I've been everywhere from the really, really nice ones down in Florida to the healing place in Wake County. I've been to all of them, and I was going to make a good go at it this time. I went to Holly Hill, and she had left me, and oh, by the way, we got 2 kids now, and she's now left, and I decided I was going to move to Wilmington because that's a big recovery town, and I should probably just get out of Holly Hill and go to Wilmington. That's where everybody gets sober, and I don't know where that myth came from, but I attempted that and went down there and went to work for a moving company down there, and I was living in a halfway house, and want the same thing. Like, I'm going to meetings. I'm going to 5 or 6 meetings a week, and I'm hanging out with whom I thought was the cool people, and playing volleyball and going to the beach and all that stuff. And I guess I tried to stay sober on fellowship. Is the best way to put it. And that day come again. Like I'm out and I'm doing a move with some other guys, and alcohol comes out, and like I don't have a defense. And the problem is, once I drink the first drink, like I can't stop. I can't tell you how many I'm going to drink and all that stuff. I can't tell you that I'm going to be kicked out when I get home because I can't drink and live in this halfway house. Like, none of that stuff is enough power to stop me, or if I'm going to go back to jail, or like none of that is enough. And I've tried many times to do that. When me and her split up, I had a lot of resentment because we had a lot of the same friends in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I felt like this never happened, but in my mind it happened. I felt like people were choosing her side over my side, and so now I don't have these friends anymore, and I just let it take me out is what I did. And so I wound up going to prison, and basically, I'll never forget that was probably the darkest moment for me. Not that it's that. I mean, it's a horrible thing to do. There's no need to go. Don't take the wrong idea, but it's like something about that metal door shutting, and just that realization of like, and all I had to do was what those people told me in Alcoholics Anonymous, man, and now I'm right here. I mean, I get the chills. Like, that's literally the thought that came through my mind. Was like, all I had to do was take that direction, but instead I took this one. And the prison that I was in, they didn't have AA meetings, and my mom had sent me a big book, and this is just where I was at. I know it's insane, but like the only thing I read out of that whole big book, and she sent me the nice big one, was page 417. And I read it every single night. Now, I don't really care for that page today, but that's all I could hang on to, man, was trying to accept where I was at. Like that was just all I could wrap my mind around, was that. And so I was mad at Alcoholics Anonymous and all the people in Alcoholics Anonymous. So when I left, I said, I'm not going back to Alcoholics Anonymous, but I'm absolutely not coming back to prison, and I'm not drinking anymore. I think I made it a week. Like, I don't have a defense. I can't, on my own willpower, like I can't stop. And so anyways, I'm down in Wilmington, I'm working, I'm relapsed, I'm staying at hotels. I had a boss that really, really loved to enable me. So what he would do was put me in a hotel for a few days until I could get back into the next halfway house, and I'd stay in that for another week or two, and then I'd relapse again. We did that cycle for about 8 months. And then finally he just told me that like I wasn't fired, but like he wasn't spending any more money on me, and that if I wanted to be homeless, that was cool. I was welcome to sleep in the back of a moving truck, and I did that in August. Just would get up and ask for a new work shirt and go to the bathroom and wash my face and go move people's furniture in 100-degree weather, and just give me enough for tonight. And I did that for a while, and what I know is that something happened, and it was not. I had no intentions. The last day I drank, I had no intentions on that being my last day. I woke up that morning. I was in a hotel. It was not a nice one either. And just something broke. I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. I think it's something you have to experience. But something internally broke, and I didn't want to kill myself, but I knew I couldn't live life anymore, and I knew I couldn't drink anymore. And I was like, man. It was low. It was the lowest I'd ever been emotionally. And I even took a shower because my skin, I literally felt like I was crawling out of my skin. Like I was trying to wash it off. Like seriously. Like I was literally, and I couldn't, and I was pacing, and I didn't know what to do, man, and I knew that I had some felony probation violations and some other charges I had caught, and I was done. And so I literally walked out of that hotel, which was on Market Street, and I started flagging down police officers. And believe it or not, it took 5 before one would stop. And I told him that I needed help and that I needed for him to take me in, that I knew there was warrants. And he proceeded to argue with me and tell me that he wasn't a taxi, and just because I was homeless, he wasn't good. And now here's my alcoholism. I need help right now. I'm going to stop this cop and tell him I need help, right? And those 3 minutes that he's trying to tell me that if I don't have warrants, he's not giving me a ride, da-da-da-da. And within 3 minutes, I'm like, you're right. I'm good, thank you. So I need help. Now I don't. So there's a short window for me with when I need to take action. And he said not so fast, and he took me in. And I don't know what happened. I know that I had a court date in 30 days, so I was pretty comfortable laying it down. They told me I had a visitor a couple of days after I'd been there, and it was a court-appointed attorney, and he said they were releasing me tomorrow. And I can tell y'all that I've been to prison and I've been to jail many times, and that was the first time I asked them to not release me. I just was safe. I knew I had nowhere to go. I knew I didn't want to drink anymore. I knew I didn't like my life. And he said, man, you're going to have to figure it out. You'll be released tomorrow. And I got released, and if you've ever been to jail in Wilmington, it's in the country. It's not downtown like most places. It's in the middle of nowhere. And so I get released, and it's like his field, and a guy was nice enough to give me a cigarette and let me use his phone, and I called my mom, and you know, she's always been there, and she just told me, she said, like, I don't know what to tell you to do, but I know that, like, alcohol is either going to kill you or you're going to live a life in prison, and I'll love you either way. And that was the help I got. And she told me that if I wanted to come back, that she would get me into the healing place, but that was it. And I was like, yeah, cool. Will you send me some money so I can get a bus ride? And she's like, no, we done all that. Just get to the bus station and I'll pay for it. And so I did that. And what happened was I got to the healing place. And for the first time, I was grateful to be in a homeless shelter. I was grateful to I had a mat on the floor, on the concrete floor. And there was about 2 weeks, there was a guy that I respected a lot that kept telling me I needed to get a sponsor, and some of y'all know him, but I didn't feel worthy enough, to be all the way honest. I'm a guy that's made a bunch of mistakes in Alcoholics Anonymous. I've harmed a lot of people in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I just didn't think anybody, would help me, to be honest. And he stayed on me for 2 weeks, and a guy came up there, and I asked him, it's a funny story, it was Mason, and I asked him to sponsor me, and he told me later he didn't like me from the past, but like he was willing to work with me. And man, like he saved my life. He would meet me. That program's real rigid, and you don't have a lot of free time, so we'd kind of beat the system, and he would come up there and read the big book to me at 5:30 in the morning. And he explained to me that, like, he was getting up at 4 o'clock to meet me at 5:30, and that I didn't need to be late. I didn't need to waste his time, and that I should take this thing serious. And the one thing he told me that I'd never been told before was that, like, if I would submit to Alcoholics Anonymous, if I would make my life about Alcoholics Anonymous, that I would have a beautiful life. And that's been the truth. Like, nothing, no statement's been more true than that. And when we met the first time, we hadn't even pulled our big books out yet, and he's wanting to read to me, and I said, but hold on, man, like, let me explain something to you. So, like, I got these kids, and I got this child support, and I got these court cases. Like, I need help, dude. Like, I understand you want to read the big book to me, but, like, what am I going to do about this mess I got? Like, I can't focus, I can't think, like, I'm probably going to prison. And he just looked at me and said, have you got your big book? That's what answer he had for me. And I didn't get it. And he started reading to me. And I really thought I was a smart person. But as he would read and break down each line to me, he explained to me what it meant. He explained to me what things meant that I thought they meant. Like, just an example would be considered. Maybe pray. Maybe meditate over that. Like, consider. Like, there was little words that I just didn't get. I missed a lot of it. And I'm a person that was taken through the steps pretty fast. And you know, the biggest change for me was in the third step. Like I'm telling y'all, I got all these court cases and I've got all this stuff going on. But like the way it was broke down to me was that like if I would just submit to a power and if I would just do this, that I'd be all right. And while I was in that homeless shelter with all that stuff going on, I became okay. And I never understood. I would hear speakers talk about like being in prison and being free. And I never got it. I never understood what they were talking about, and I understood at that moment. Like I was set free at that point. And nothing changed circumstantially. But I knew that I was on the right path, and I knew that God had me. And all I needed to do was just take that direction. And I didn't know what that was. And I'll be honest with y'all, I don't know that I know today. We continued on, and I started an inventory, and it was the first time that I ever did an honest inventory. And, you know, I did that, and I did my fifth step. And there was a lot of things, man, in my life that I can't find apart. You know, as a child and things that happened, like I was unable to find that, but I was able to put all that stuff on paper, and he was able to help me look at that stuff. And you know, my experience with that wasn't great. It just, I did it because I was told I needed to do it. And the way I was sponsored was we took the hour like the book talks about. We did it at his house, and then he immediately took me into 6 and 7. And I don't know a beautiful way to do it, because a more beautiful way to do it, because I'm at the lowest of the lowest right after I finished that fifth step. Like emotionally, I'm drained, I'm spent. But in 6 and 7, it tells me I can have a beautiful life, and now I get to set up what do I want that to look like, and what do my ideals need to look like, and what kind of life do I want? Like that's the way he showed it to me, that now that I've tapped into this power, that I can go anywhere and do anything. And I needed to put that stuff on paper, and I did. You know, and there was some cold hard facts too. You know, he asked me to make a list of, you know, if I was to die that day, what people would have said about me. And I can tell y'all that list wasn't good. But then he asked me to make a list of what I wanted people to say about me. And he told me that I should probably read that every day and pray over it and try to become that person. And I got immediate, like that stuff just, like I started to change. Pretty quick, like as quick as I was willing to do that stuff. And I continued on, and by this point, you know, the drink, it's relieved. Like I'm not thinking about drinking anymore. I'm not so self-absorbed, not thinking about self all day. I'm in this homeless shelter. I'm starting to teach classes and get outside of myself. And he showed me how to make amends. Amends are important to me. That's a big thing. I'm in a homeless shelter, and he's having me make amends. And I'm a guy that messes up, man. I like to mess with people's money and steal, and I owe a lot of people a lot of money. And one thing I told myself when I started this time, that I was going to pay people back. And that was something I was never willing to do in the past. And I believe subconsciously it ate me alive, and I never thought about it. Like I never remember thinking about it, but I believe deep down inside I was not set free due to that. And I wanted to be able to look at the world. I wanted that desperately, to be able to have made set wrongs right. That was important to me. And he showed me how I could do that. And I was like, well, but I can't do that now because I don't have a job. I'm in this homeless shelter. And he didn't subscribe to that. You know, like I started calling people and attempting to make things right and letting people know what was going on. And I did finish that program, and I got extremely active in a home group, and the home group that I chose at that time, there was a lot of newcomers there, and the main reason I chose it is because they had a detox meeting that they attended every week, and it was every Tuesday night, and I thought that was important, and I was able to go to that detox, and we would go to eat before and do that. When it was the same, there was about 8 of us, and we did it every single Tuesday without fail. It was the same crew there, and I can't, like I got so much out of that, like just being in that detox every week, and I did that up until a year ago. I did it for a good 3 years. I was able to start paying people back and making amends, and I went to work for $10 an hour, and you know, I'm a guy that had always made decent money, and I thought I was worth more than that, but like I was just taught to just do that, and it making $10 an hour, man, like I'm still paying for a halfway house, and you know, I'm riding the bus. Not something I was ever willing to do, and I'm paying people back. And I was able to save up enough money to buy a cheap car, and the guy that I worked for, I got to tell the story. So the guy, it was a men's time. The guy I'm working for in Wilmington, like he knew I had stole from him. He was one of the guys that had felony charges out on me. He had new felonies out on me. And there was zero question. When Mason took me through the book, he said, you are going back to prison. I had mentioned it 4 or 5 times. He said, with your record, odds are you are going back to prison. So what it's important is that we get through the steps before you go to prison. Because you're going to need to find someone in there to work with while you're in there. And when you get out, you'll be able to have a beautiful life. But that is probably what the cards are for you. And he wasn't nice about it. Like, that's exactly what he told me. So it came to this guy that had the charges, and he was on my list. And he told me I needed to make amends. And I said to him, well, so the law says that I can't contact him because he has current charges on me. And they tell you when you have charges, you can't contact the people. And he looked at me. He didn't like that. He looked at me and he said, man, I'm going to ask you one question. I said, what? He said, do you want to handle the drink problem for once and for all or not? I said, well, I do. He said, then you'll make it right. So I had court that day for this case. And he said, while you're in Wilmington, I urge you to stop by there and see that man. So against all that stuff, man, I had the most fear I've ever had. And I sat down and told him. And I made a formal amends to him. And not only did I admit what I was in court for, I went ahead and admitted all the other money that I stole from him. And I told him that I wanted to make it right. And he knew about all of it, man. He just, like, that was the whole thing, was like that I thought that I knew something he didn't know. And he already knew about it. And so my relationship with him changed that moment. And I was working for a moving company up here, and he called me and said that, he wanted to talk to me. I was complaining about how I'm only making $10 an hour. And he asked me, was I still sober? Because somebody that just got out of a homeless shelter should be happy to have a job for $10 an hour. And so we had that conversation, which was uncomfortable. And he said, well, I'm about to eat with my wife. Let me call you back. I just want to see how you were doing. I was like, that's fine. And so he called me back and he said, look, man, like, this goes against what all my family's telling me and everything, man. But I'm gonna put up the money for you to start a moving company in Raleigh. And I'm gonna give you $5,000 in cash, and I'm gonna give you 1 truck, and you can sink or swim. And I didn't understand it. And he said, but the only thing is, man, you need to help as many people as you can help. I was like, wow. So here I go. Me and another guy in the program, we start this thing off, and it kind of takes right off, believe it or not. Two alcoholics that got horrible records, and we just were trying to live by the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous, trying to apply the steps and the traditions in business. We're doing it with employees. Our meetings with employees would almost sound like a tradition meeting. And it worked, man. Like, I'm telling you, it worked. Like, to be of service. And just all the same principles I was taught right here, man. People loved us, and our customers loved us, and he relapsed and was unable to get sober again, and so I wound up buying him out. And I tell you all that to say that, like, I've stayed on that path, and I was able to pay him back all the money that I had taken from him. We've done maybe 15 12-step calls together. Me and this guy in Wilmington, we would go get people and help get them into treatment, and a lot of those folks now work for us. I was able to re-engage with my kids, like, so all the sponsors I had always told me that I should fight for my kids. And some of y'all know what had happened to Mason, and Jerry called me and was like, man, I think I'd love to work with you if you're willing. And I said, yeah, sure, and that was the first topic that we really started working on. It's like, man, everybody's telling me I need to fight for my kids, and I need to do this, and I need to get a lawyer, and I got the money now. And he said, man, why don't you try the spiritual approach? That never entered my mind. I was like, what's the spiritual approach? He's like, pay your child support. Help out. Give. You're not owed anything. And it's amazing. I was already paying my child support, but it was amazing when I started giving more, and I started giving extra for all the years that I was ripping and running, that I left her hanging, and I just started giving. And like, next thing you know, like, she's calling me, the kids want to see you. Next thing you know, like, just everything has just just fell. Like, I don't have to fight anymore. I think that was the biggest thing Jerry taught me through that lesson was like, man, stop fighting, dude. Just stop fighting. Just try to walk it, live it. He's been a great example for me with that. And so I've been able to do that. And I remember one time, too, like, alcohol took me to such a low place that I was in this it was at a Taco Bell. I was homeless, and there was this, I just remember sitting back looking, but it was like this young girl. I'm guessing she was like 12 or 13. But I think she knew I was homeless. Probably was obvious, but you know, she had came up and she came up to me, but she came up with her father and she gave me $5, and he said that she couldn't eat without me eating. And I remember just watching them, and I'm thinking, like, why can't I like I just want to, like, you know, I just want to be like that, man. Like, I just want to be able to eat dinner and like just be with my father or my family. Like, I was unable, like, alcohol took all that from me. Like, I was unable to be any sort of human person. I had no emotions, no respect for anyone, no respect for myself. Like, all those little things, I was just unable to do it. And I told my probation officer I was being funny. She didn't think it was funny. But when I was leaving Wilmington after she arrested me the last time, I told her, I was like, you know, and she was attractive or whatever, and I made a joke with her, and she didn't like it. And I said to her, I was like, man, you look like my future wife. That's what I had told her, to be honest with you. And she didn't like that stuff. And the last time I left from her, she told me I was on the way to the healing place, and she said, you know, like, if you can get sober, like, you could probably have a wife like me. And it's cool. She showed up in court 3 years later for me to stand up and talk about a change that I had become. And she told the judge that, like, out of all her cases that she had, that, like, I was one of the ones that had, you know, had the most transformation. And it was Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's what it all is Alcoholics Anonymous. But, you know, I've since been able to get married. The business is great. We now own 13 trucks. I've got 30 movers. Like, it is amazing when I wake up in the morning. Sometimes I have so much anxiety because I don't want to mess it up, man. Like, I just don't know, like, where I'm at and everything. Not just the stuff, but, like, the relationships, my wife, you know, the home groups, the different things I have going on. It's like, man, I just don't want to mess it up. And the steps have enabled me to find the power that I needed. And that's what I believe today. And we were talking before the meeting, like, you know, there's a lot of guys that I was really, really close to that, you know, some have had 7, 8, 9, 10 years sober, and they've gone back out, and they're unable to get traction. I watch them. I believe in my heart. I believe that they want to be sober. I believe they want to be as sober as much as I do. But I don't believe they have the power. And my experience has been that once I take that first drink, I don't get to decide when I stop. I thought I could. I tried for many years, man. But I don't get to make that decision. And the book talks about, you know, we lost the power of choice, and that's absolutely been my experience, is I can't choose. So I love my life, and I love Alcoholics Anonymous, and I love all you guys. So thank you for allowing me to be here.